all the rock art images on this whole wall. It's a large panel. We have bear tracks and mountain lion tracks. You've got this bighorn sheep down here. Anthropomorphic figures. Big, long zigzag that comes across this whole entire wall panel.
Oh, wow. And here she is.
Yep, this is kind of the jewel at the end of the trail.
Honey, I'm home. Wow. We came down all the way back there.
Yeah.
But why live here? Why build this here? I see the tower, right, which we saw on the way down. I guess it's the view. This is, I mean, it's a stunning view, but you know, the question that what I don't get is, this isn't easy. You know, they had to bring these rocks here, if not break them from the wall, and there's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So why? You know, why live here? Why bring their babies and their grandchildren to such a precarious location and live their lives here?
Because something's going on that's forcing them into these kind of situations.
And you think that was warfare or
well, there was
tribal
certainly strife
unrest,
going on.
yeah.
There had to have been something to get people to have to bring their living up into these kind of places.
Mm-hmm.
You know, out on ledges. You know, you've got huge drop-offs right out from your doorway.
You can't really see.
You have to mix mortar, get water up here to mix all this mortar to put these stones together. It's just an amazing amount of effort, and it's not easy. As you can see, the closest water here is down in the canyon bottom.
What are these holes?
They're called loopholes.
What are they seeing? This one shows me basically that big rock.
Yeah, which
right
could be
there.
a route of people coming up into this site. So if you start looking at these, they're called loopholes. If you start looking through them, a lot of times along walls, they point in different directions and show you things happening. So some people would call this a very defensive posturing type of aspect to this architecture. You know, it could be, you could be looking at your water, you could be looking at a ledge where somebody might come across to come into your site, possibly to attack you, whatever. So some people interpret these as another kind of defensive type of posturing in these loopholed walls. You know, this is kind of the last structure on this whole ledge system. You know, is this the final holdout right here? We don't know. And I'd like to stay longer. The sun's starting to head down over the canyon rim, and we probably ought to start heading out of here.
The Anasazi's hideaway definitely felt like an outpost or watchtower. But what were they watching for? Vaughn says that their most likely enemy, the Navajo, didn't come to this area for at least another 100 years. In fact, there doesn't seem to be evidence of any other tribes around here in the 13th century. So who was the enemy? I need to find out what was happening to the Anasazi before they moved into the cliffs. It's time to visit an old friend. He's a developer near Cortez, Colorado, just down the road from Mesa Verde. There's no bigger enthusiast about the Anasazi. He's found hundreds of ruins on his land, entire villages where the Indians lived before they took to the cliffs.
Hi, Josh. How are you?
Hi, Archie. Good to be back.
Great.
You guys have been busy.
Oh, we sure have.
His name is
Come on
Archie
inside,
Hansen.
I'll show you what we're doing. You haven't
He's
seen
uncovered
this.
some pretty incredible evidence, which could explain what drove the Anasazi to take refuge.
A lot of new sites.
A lot of them, and we've done a lot of work here.
How many are you at right now?
Well, we're up to about 215 sites across the property right now. And you can come out in
Archie's prize site is this partially reconstructed pueblo that probably housed about 20 people, or 4 families.
way over there in that kiva. So we have quite a network.
It was occupied continuously from around 650 to 1150 AD. One of the most fascinating things Archie's found is a maze of tunnels that connect the communal rooms, or kivas, with the other living areas. And I've just got to explore where they go. But I find out the hard way how small these people were. The men were about 5'4", the women only 5 feet tall.
Tight squeeze, Arch.
At 6 feet and 180 pounds, I can barely squeeze through. And this is only the beginning of what Archie's excavations have uncovered.
Look at all these pot shards. Look at this. I mean, can you imagine finding this many pot shards? And this is just a small tray sample. Look at these, look at this. Look at this corrugated pot. You can imagine finding that, not just on the trail, but on your own property. It's stunning. I would be excited. I'd be excited if I just found this piece. But he's got buckets and buckets and buckets and buckets. Look at all these studies. Macrobotanical remains, bioarchaeology of disarticulated remains, faunal remains, disturbed sites. He's invested so much time, and the benefit is that all of us get a much clearer picture of who the Anasazi really were.
And what Archie and his team of archaeologists have found is far from the traditional image of the peaceful Anasazi.
Are you finding any bones in your sites here?
Oh, everyone.
Everyone?
Yes, we did. We found several bodies over here. We found over in the end one.
So the picture here was not one of a peaceful village.
Well, that they didn't leave this in a peaceful condition. This is evidently the end of the trip for them. This was death and violence.
There were 3 sunken kivas in this pueblo. They were once the heart of Anasazi communal life.
This is beautiful.
But they became the scene of horrible massacres, with strong evidence of cannibalism.
Did you find any bodies or any bones in here?
In this particular one, no, but we found some that were in the center one and the other one down at the end.
All of them indicated cannibalism?
Everyone contributed to it. Yes, they were broken up. There are many different signs. The signature of cannibalism is extremely positive. There have to be 7 particularly salient facts there. Oh, they're just to numerize some of them. Pot polish on the end of green strict fractures. They have to have the bones broken open, the marrow extracted from that, bodies disarticulated, heads missing, vertebrae there, no hands, no feet. Unfortunately,
this is controversial stuff. Native Americans strongly object to their ancestors being characterized as cannibals. Yet many archaeologists find the evidence in Anasazi sites compelling. They cite signs like pot polish, tiny areas of polish that form when a bone is cooked in a clay pot, and cut marks and abrasions that are identical to those seen on animals which have been consumed. What Archie was saying was that his site is full of such evidence.
We had a 14-year-old male and an estimated 21-year-old male, and they were butchered and probably consumed down there because they found them on parts and pieces in the fire pit and on the benches going around, etc. We reinterred what we could find in that other kiva into the wall.
After the massacre, evidence suggests that any remaining residents abandoned this pueblo and moved on.
What made them decide as a community, time to go?
Well, I think that if I was back in that day and age and I had a marauding force come in here and wipe out an entire pueblo where I was living, stuffed bodies in the kiva and everything else, that I would think was not a very good place to live, and I think I would move. I would want more protection.
So you're saying that the warfare wasn't internal. There was actually marauders coming into these communities?
Well, you've opened a whole box of guesses about that one. And my guess would be that they were outside external forces. Was it a neighbor who did not have sufficient food and you had a food supply? Or whether they were people coming from Mexico, which is a big conjecture about this thing at this time.
Using Archie's Wi-Fi network, I searched the web for evidence of Anasazi cannibalism. Suspicious bones have been found at about 50 archaeological sites. Not a lot when you look at the whole history of the Anasazi. But the curious thing is that almost all the evidence dates from the same period, beginning around 900 AD and peaking around 1150. These dates correspond exactly to the time when Anasazi civilization was dominated by a place called Chaco Canyon, a city as mysterious as it is grand. It's also in the middle of nowhere. Mutilated bones, evidence of cannibalism. Everything Archie Hansen said at his pueblo seems to point to something going terribly wrong in the Anasazi world by the mid-12th century. And the clues to this violence point to Chaco Canyon, The Anasazi's greatest achievement, now a desolate ruin in the New Mexico desert. On Cedar Mesa, I saw some convincing evidence that fear drove the Anasazi into the cliffs. To understand the root of that fear, I have to understand Chaco and what shook the walls of that great stone city.
I need to see these ruins from above, so I've called in my friend Bubba Peters with his PPG to help get me into the air.
PPG is short for Powered Paraglider, and Chaco's so big I need something like this contraption to get the lay of the land. But strong winds can make flying tricky, even fatal if I'm not careful.
80 pounds of wind machine. He puts out a 28 horsepower. One small step for man. Prop clear?
If you can run 30 feet with 80 pounds on your back without getting out of breath, you can fly a PPG. If it's calm, you can travel about 25 miles per hour and stay up for 3 hours on just 4 gallons of gas. Pretty economical for views like these. But the fun is flying slow and low. It's amazing how much you can see. That's Chaco. In its heyday, from about 900 to 1150 AD, it was a huge cultural center for much of the Four Corners. People dragged tree trunks for up to 50 miles to erect these enormous buildings. The biggest is Pueblo Bonito. It was 4 or 5 stories high, with 800 rooms. Archaeologists believe that 1,000 people lived here, in what's been called the largest apartment building in the world until the late 1800s. There's nothing like it in prehistoric North America. Once again, I feel the need to see it up close and on foot. Chaco was much more than just a city. It was a ceremonial powerhouse where people gathered from miles around to worship their gods in great kivas like these. But by 1150, the city was completely abandoned, its inhabitants scattered. Archaeologists are still trying to figure out what went wrong. Was it drought? Too many people with too few resources? Or did something more sinister take place to bring down this great city? The crumbling stone walls don't offer many clues, but the wooden beams might. I've come to one of the only intact rooms left in Pueblo Bonito.
Is this really a prehistoric beam?
Oh yes, this is the original roof support of this room.
Wow. And we're going all the way to the center of the log?
Center of the log, where the pin
Drilling
is.
into an ancient roof beam may seem pretty strange. But when studying structures like Chaco, this is one of the most important tools archaeologists use.
18-volt DeWalt.
I'm getting what's called a core sample, a little piece of wood that can help determine when this room was built. Dendrochronology is the science of dating wood by studying tree rings, and nobody knows more about it in the American Southwest than Dr. Jeff Dean.
How accurate, I'm just wondering, how accurate is the data?
Well, when we take this core back to the lab and analyze it, we can date the year in which that tree was cut down.
Really?
Yeah, like there is no plus or minus. This is, say, 1120. And it's 1120 and not 1119 and not 1121.
Is that far enough?
Yes.
10 minutes later, and I've got it.
First we take this
My
out
own
there.
piece of data to add to the scientific record.
All right, let me show you what we have here. If you hold out your hand, we should produce